So I apologize for being off yesterday, but we're back today. And hopefully today we'll get through two Sichos, Sichos Ches and Tes. Before we begin, as usual, just want to stop and transition with a breath or two into the learning. Sicha Ches and Sicha Tes are both very short, and also I think in many ways quite deep, given their brevity. Sicha Ches, Kishalomdim Mile de Paranusa. When a person is learning things related to punishment, penalty, difficulty, challenge, pain, etc. Kigon kishalomdim hilchos avelos ukiyotze, such as when a person is learning the laws of avelos, the laws of mourning, ukiyotze, and similar such things. Rabbi Nachman says, "Ein la'ayin sham harbe." You shouldn't delve too deeply into these topics. There's no need to sink one's thoughts into those kinds of places, into places of pain and challenge and difficulty and loss, etc. No need to sink into those things. Because our minds, they have an incredible power. They have an incredible ability, as we explain in other places. And we talked about this earlier in this series. Like the Baal Shem Tov says, Shel Adam Sham Kulo, wherever a person's mind is, that's where the whole person is. Our thoughts really sort of structure our reality and structure the reality that we find ourselves living in. And to the extent to which we focus our minds and focus our thoughts and sit in a focus on negative things, we find ourselves sitting in negative things. Not just a matter of, when we think bad, things are bad, but when we think bad, sort of that defines really the horizon of our understanding. It defines and creates the igulim, as we've said before, the sphere within which we are existing at that moment. That is the limits of our mind. Where we are thinking, that's where our mind is. And so Rabbi Nachman says, when it comes to these kinds of topics, although these are important topics, and one has to be familiar with them, and one has to engage with them, nevertheless, one has to move quickly through those things. Move quickly through Quranius, move quickly through studying things, thinking about things, or reflecting on negative things, challenges, difficulties, what's going wrong. Instead, Rabbi Nachman says, as he says many times all over the place, shift focus and focus on what's going right. Focus on good things. It doesn't mean that bad things don't exist. And indeed, that is what he's telling us here. It doesn't mean to put your head in the sand and pretend that there's nothing negative out there. There's nothing painful out there. There's nothing difficult that we go through. We go through such things. We do indeed learn mile de perinusa. We do encounter such things. We do indeed study the laws of Avelos, and we have to study those laws. Nevertheless, it's part of Torah. The Tochacha is part of the Torah. We have to engage these things and we have to encounter those things. Nevertheless, we don't have to dwell in them. They're going to come to us anyway, I think is also part of the point. We are going to encounter these things because we will encounter challenges and we will encounter setbacks and we will encounter failures and pain and suffering in this life. Or like Rabbi Nachman says, he doesn't know about Olam Haba, but Gehenna is right here in this world. Rabbi Nachman says, right? All of the terrible things that we can possibly encounter, we're going to encounter them right here. We all go through the things that we go through. So there's no need to sit in those things when we're not going through them. We are going to encounter them, and when we encounter them, we should try to move through them rather than dwell in them. We have a tendency People have a tendency that when things are bad, we have a tendency to dwell on what's bad and to dwell on the badness of those things, as opposed to acknowledging the badness of those things and then transcending and moving through the badness of those things onto what comes after. I think it's interesting in connection to this that we find, I was discussing this with a Chavrusa of mine some weeks ago, we find, I think, that Rabbi Nachman is very big on, focus on the good, think about good things, don't dwell on the bad things, etc. And certainly, among many of the Hasidim of Rabbi Nachman, whether died in Breslov Hasidim or others, this becomes an important mantra of thinking about good things and focusing on good things, and even taken to extremes where, you just go around dancing all the time and smiling all the time as if nothing, you never have a care in the world. And that's certainly a part of Rabbi Nachman's sort of legacy, is that idea, is that focus on good and that focus on positivity. It's a very, very powerful and very useful thing. At the same time, of course, we know that there are risks to that. There's a risk to that focus on endless positivity. This is one of the risks that go along with Pnimius HaTorah in general, which is the risk that you're never spurred to action by a sense of there's something missing, there's something lacking, there's something that's not good that needs to be improved, because it's just everything is good and happy all the time. And then on the other side of the coin, we find things and ideas where there's a focus on negativity. In response to that fear that goes along with this focus on positivity, there's a different approach that says don't focus on the positive, actually focus on the negative. Focus on what needs to be fixed, focus on what's missing, focus on how you can improve, on how far you still have to go. Don't look at the glass as half full, look at the glass as half empty. How much more work can be done and should be done, and how much growth and self-development and so on still needs to be done, and tikkun amidus and so on and so forth. And that's a different approach. And I think it's worth appreciating that first, I'll go out on a limb and say it, although I don't want to psychologize Rabbi Nachman, but I think, or anybody else, I think that those who find over the course of their own lives and in their own experiences find and experience the dangers of negativity and have been and are taken to bad places by their negativity, they have to emphasize and focus on and reinforce the importance of focusing on the positive. Whereas those who have encountered the deleterious and negative impacts of too much positivity, and they focus on the opposite. And it could very well be, given what we know about Rabbi Nachman's life and the many, many, many difficulties that he faced, and what we find in his writings about himself and HaRan, and what we know about how he experienced the world, he had very major ups and downs, and his downs were very, very down. And Rabbi Nachman, I think, understood well what negativity does, and we don't have to go looking for it because it will find us and it will hit us hard. And it's not necessarily a bad thing for it to hit us hard, but we don't need to go searching for it, and we don't need to go looking for it. That was his experience, and that's what he was here to give over, because his experience itself was a plea for being Megala something important. And the thing that he was able to be Megala to us through that experience is that when we are encountering negativity, the negativity can pull us down, and the thing to focus on is the positivity, not to dwell on the negative and the difficult. And the truth is that the other side of the coin is true as well. We find this, I think, also in terms of, in many discussions around tshuva, Rav Vitchemeyer talks about this quite a bit, that when a person finds themselves the katnas hamotin, the bechinas leah, with a sense of lack and smallness and distance from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a sense in which I am so small and I am so insignificant and I am so inadequate, then the appropriate response is the opposite: to be oved, to engage in spiritual practices, to engage avoda b'derech rachel, in godless hamolten, to not appreciate how big God is because I am so small, but to appreciate how big God is, and then by default, getting into a place of avoda. Avoda b'bechinas rachel. And when I'm sitting in bechinas rachel, when I'm sitting in gadlus hamocha, and then now I'm in a healthy space and I can handle hard work and I can handle some harsh, self-judgment and self-evaluation and cheshbon nefesh. And that's the time to engage in avoda b'katnas b'bechinas leah. So we always have to, I think, focus on and appreciate the opposites of where we are, wherever we find ourselves. I've been trying to do this with one of my kids who sometimes has a difficult time and gets really dysregulated and so on. What she needs when she is dysregulated is not discipline. She needs a hug. And when she is in a very, very good place, then discipline can be effective and can help build her even more by creating structure for the good things and the good place that she finds herself. Okay, Sicha test. The Shema Baal Shem Tov Zichrono Livracha, the name of the Baal Shem Tov, Shasak and Ein Nasunim b'matana. You shouldn't give a knife as a gift. Hainu she'echad lo yitin b'chaver sakim b'matana. Meaning, a person shouldn't give to their friend, shouldn't give a knife as a gift to their friend. There's many things to say about this, but on a very, very simple and basic level, I would say that knives are things that separate, and friendships and gifts are things that are supposed to draw together. And it's a stira minei ubei. It's sort of an internal paradox to say that I'm going to build a relationship through something that is supposed to break things apart and discern things into their parts. And the parts that we cut things into are perfectly valid. If they weren't a real part, we couldn't cut them into that part, right? The bonds of when the bonds holding something together are so strong so that there aren't really even parts, and then we can't separate them. When the bonds are a little bit weak and there are two separate parts, and we can separate them. But the goal of the matana is to create bonds and strengthen bonds rather than to divide those bonds. And so, again, although there's value in distinguishing between things, and knives don't only serve destructive, negative purposes, but they can also serve positive purposes. And sometimes we have to break things up in order to put them back together in a much better way. And nevertheless, when it comes to a friendship, when it comes to the proper place for building up, one has to be careful not to try to build up with things that break apart. And when you're trying to build someone up, and this is perhaps connected to the previous idea, when you're trying to build somebody up, you have to understand what it is that's going to build them up in the place that they are, given the relationship and given the nature of what you're trying to build. And you have to feed the right kind of medicine. You have to use the right kind of tools. You have to give the right kinds of gifts. The right kind of gift when you're trying to build the relationship is not something that separates and divides and tears asunder relationship. Just like when you're trying to build someone up, the thing to build someone up is not to put them down; it's to build them up. Now, what it is that's going to build them up depends on where they are and where you are and what the nature of the relationship is. But I think that's part of what Sichos is getting at. And so, Bezras Hashem, tomorrow we will get back into Sichos Yud, which is a slightly longer one and a little bit more substantial. Have a wonderful, fantastic day.